To finally visit. It's just funny that when we first meet, like 3 years ago, and so yeah, it's cool to visit here because was the first time I visited or in Aspen, was that the first time we actually met?
Yeah, first time we met in person. You're pretty good about calling and meeting over the phone.
Yeah, so I just remember, oh yeah, I do remember having those conversations, but then just having the wine, and that's why I did start out with that kind of whenever we're out in the field. I don't drink a whole lot, and um, for a lot of reasons, but one being just because, yeah, it always just makes me feel like crap, and especially the next day. But I just remember having your wine for the first time. It felt like nothing on top of how good it tasted. So it's cool to finally get here. And so I guess with that, would just love to hear, kind of your backstory a little bit leading up to today with Peony Lane Wine,
Yeah.
because we're sitting in the property or I guess the area that you grew up on, right?
Yeah.
Essentially, because I know you started in Austin, came here, and I guess, yeah, just can share that because you briefly covered it with how your father bought the property, but kind of want to go back to yeah, whenever you were just up here as a kid.
Yeah. So I grew up on this farm. My dad wanted to grow all his own food, so we moved here when I was 8, and he turned a 64-acre organic apple and pear farm into um, 25 acres of um, self-sustaining farming. So there's a little bit more fruit than he can eat, but the variety is there: apples, pears, cherries, nectarines, plums, peaches, and then huge garden, huge greenhouse. They barely heat their house they have a fireplace for their whole house and heat the house with a massive greenhouse for every day that it's not snowing, basically. And grow all their own food, freeze it, eat deer, raise sheep.
And this is when you were a kid too?
Yeah, it was my dad's dream. And so I grew up here and, wanted to get the F out, and didn't like farming at all.
Did you just feel trapped?
Yeah, definitely some trap. Definitely wanted to see the world. Definitely knew I had more in me than just working on a farm. As far like, the labor's nice, but my brain gets going, and I feel like I need to use my brain more than just the physical labor. So what I have now is a kind of happy medium. But yeah, and also just you're forced to work on the farm when you're a kid and you hate it because your dad tells you to. So that was my summer job every year. And yeah, working in the vineyard, working on the farm, just doing manual labor, and mostly just working for my dad. And don't like being told what to do, so I hated it. And then went off to college and lived in Vietnam, teaching English, and just living in Denver, all for 10 years or so. And then realized that I needed to bet on myself. I needed to start a business and didn't really know what to do. And thought of all different things, was like in my head for about a year. And then one day I had a conversation with my dad, and he was like, well, why don't you just make wine? And then we just talked the numbers, and I was like, oh, okay. And the next month I was applying for a liquor license. It just kind of hit and made sense and was what I needed to do. My dad got convinced to plant 4 acres of Pinot Noir grapes because a friend of his was going to buy his grapes after a few years. But the first year of production, the guy wanted the vines to mature more, so he taught my dad how to make wine instead of buying the grapes. And my dad, being wanting to do self-sustaining farming, then just made wine the rest of forever and never sold the grapes to the guy. So he had a co-op where a bunch of people got together and they all had rights to a small percentage of the grapes from my family's vineyard. And then there was a couple huge years where he kind of had to get a liquor license to be legal to produce that much wine. And so he did. My sister was living here, helped him sell it, and got great reviews. But ultimately, my dad was just like a hobbyist winemaker. And some of the reviews he got were like at the level where it was kind of insane, that I knew if my dad could figure it out and get these reviews, I could probably do that, because that means there had to just be something special in the grapes, in the vines here. And so if I go with that base, I could figure it out. And so I just kind of invested my life savings into making wine
When
And
did you first
then
start that?
2019,
2019.
invested my life savings 2 times over the next year and still hadn't sold a bottle because I was still waiting on aging. And by the third year, or second and a half year or whatever, when I started selling, I got the feedback I needed that it was good enough, and I knew I'd get better, that I could keep going. And also, I was so deeply invested already that I kind of had to. So, yeah, I just kind of, I taught myself to the extent that you do. I thought my dad would teach me how to make wine, but I pretty much, the first time I started doing stuff, I was like, oh, he doesn't know what he was doing at all. He got me through the basics. This is the step that you do, but like crafting wine, he had no idea. So I read a bunch of books, and then I just talked to a bunch of winemakers who were all super friendly and all open and educated, and I'm not afraid to seem dumb. So was able to learn and pick it up and just learn by doing. Um, and 5 years in, things are going well, and constantly selling, making more wine, and still learning. I mean, I think it's something you really just learn throughout your entire lifetime.
So I guess, how do you make wine? What's the process of that?
Okay, so just bare bones here. You harvest the grapes, and then as soon as you harvest the grapes, you put them in a machine that is called a crusher slash destemmer. There's in all of this, everyone has different techniques. So I'm describing generally how I do it. There's tons of different ways. Everyone has their like little minutia that they do differently. Put it in a crusher destemmer. So the stems get rejected, and I get somewhat crushed grapes in a vat or in a bin, and then you start a fermentation, and that ferments for about 2 weeks. You punch it down every day, and once that's done fermenting after 2 weeks, you put it in the wine press and you press it into a barrel or a stainless steel tank. And then once it's in the barrel, I age it for a year to 2 years. And about every 6 weeks, I refill it with wine because the barrels breathe. And so in that time, I'm tasting it, I'm adding oak if I need to, depending on the variety, and just kind of making sure things are going well. I really don't touch it too much. I'll add some tannins to give it some structure if it needs it. But ultimately, I'm trying to leave it as pure, just the grapes as possible. That other winemakers will have tons of different other things they do within the wine to manipulate the flavor, texture, taste, aroma. But I'm kind of just like, hey, I got good grapes. I'm going to do the baseline, make sure it's supported, make sure it has structure, make sure the oak is there, and let it be.
Now, because we're on the property and you've got the vines out there, are those only for Pinot Noir?
Yeah, so Pinot Noir is the variety of grape.
Okay.
And so that creates the wine. And Pinot Noir is the only red grape that will grow here. So yes, you can have like your favorite wine, your favorite variety, but if it doesn't grow where you want to grow, you obviously can't do it. And then if it grows mediocre, you may like another wine more because that vine just grows super well. So they all grow differently. We're at the highest elevation wine region in North America, and thus we're kind of on the edge of what's possible. And so we kind of are strictly limited. But Pinot Noir fits insanely well here. It starts growing like at a perfect time, has just a long enough growing season, and we harvest right before the first frost. And we get a really delicate, light Pinot that is beautiful. And I mean, I put my Pinot up in a world-class variety. It's just, you don't get that unless it's a blind tasting because everyone has their assumptions.
Yeah. Well, I guess because I don't know a whole lot about the wine world, and I'm assuming it's pretty cutthroat, especially for the bigger you get. And then also just with today's society, you're able to hide a lot of, if the quality's poor, you can add stuff and hide a lot of that. And it's very hard for the consumer to understand that too. So I would just love, I know it's kind of a general question, just shedding light on what is the wine world like from your perspective?
So there are a ton of awesome small producers, and I find small producers are very friendly, very open, because I can't recreate what they do and they can't recreate what I do because they don't have my grapes.
Right. And I'm assuming they're in a different location, or you mean here too?
Well, even here, all the Pinot Noirs taste very different.
Really?
Yeah, there's pretty large differences, and that's different clones of Pinot Noir, so different expressions of the same variety, and then different soil, different growing techniques, and then different winemaking techniques. Like, I mean, there's a million different not just additives, but like different things within the process that change the flavor. So small wineries, the small world is like, there's a lot of wineries that are that size, bigger than mine, and within this, like, if there's three sections of the size of wineries, you have the small up to maybe 10,000 bottles a year, or 10,000 cases a year, so 120,000 bottles. That's manageable for a smaller winery. You sell most of your wine direct to consumer. You do a little wholesale, but ultimately you're able to keep most of your margins high because you're doing all the direct sales as much as possible. That's possible, and all those people seem to be very friendly, very open. They're like very connected with their craft and making art. And then there's this gap where, like, between 10,000 and, let's say, 30,000 or 100,000 cases a year, where it's not profitable to run a winery. So you're either small or you're huge. And that's because when you're small, you benefit by being able to sell it all direct to consumers. So you have a larger profit margin, but you're not benefiting on scale. Whereas when you're huge, you're able to cut so many costs, benefits of scale, and you have to be a certain size to really benefit from that, because your margins are so cut. I mean, when you're selling to a liquor store, you're selling for half the price that it sells for. So you have to produce a ton of wine. And so when you're at that size, then you become more of a commercial grade food beverage product. And in that, you're trying to produce something that tastes the same every single year, and you're trying to do something that tastes on a rating scale high. So there's several rating scales, but the kind of most prominent original one was by Robert Parker. And he was an influential wine critic who had specific flavors that he liked, and was so influential that the wine industry moved towards his flavors. They would manipulate their wine just to be able to score higher on his rating system, because just by getting a higher rating of his, you would make millions and millions more dollars. So then you manipulate your wine with additives, or grow a specific way to get those flavor profiles, grow specific grapes that he likes, and the whole wine industry shifts. And so when you move towards a centralizing factor like that, you are pushed to use all these additives, and we can get into that about how that makes you feel bad afterwards, but you lose a lot of the magic, because you're going towards this end destination in flavor, where each winemaker has, an idea of maybe what the wine should or they want to taste like, but there's not this hard and fast rating system for a lot. I mean, there is, but when you're making wine, it's kind of just like, hey, this is the year, this is what the grapes give me, this is what I can do.
Right.
And for me personally, the closer you go towards that end of the spectrum of this is what the grapes want to express versus what the winemaker wants to express, is more magical for me. However, I think there's also a lot of art in winemaking. There's a lot of techniques you can do that are not chemical additives. But once you get to that large scale, it's a little bit more brute force, and you're just trying to get something that lasts on a shelf, that a Cab Sauv tastes like a Cab Sauv, tastes like a Cab Sauv, and you're not surprising anyone because they're just buying it off the shelf at a supermarket. Whereas when you have connection with your customer, when you build a brand that people come back to, they're comfortable with a little bit more variability, because they've experienced the good years, they've experienced the bad years, and they just know that they're getting wine that they like from you, they support you, and they connect with you. And there's probably, I'm, in that, I see that, but for most people, they're not super connected to a winery.
I mean, it's the same thing with just our food in general. We expect the food to look the same, taste the same, and if not, you kind of just riot. But then you look at going to a farm and you look at some of the produce, it looks ugly as all hell. But that's just kind of how it's always been. But now, so that's why I think that's interesting you're mentioning that for wine too, because it just seems, whenever you're just severely disconnected from it, it's just hard to, I guess it's hard to be connected if you're so disconnected from it. So yeah, just wanted to add that. I kind of cut you off
No,
there.
I mean, it's definitely like the food industry in a lot of ways. I think that, if you talk to a rancher, there's probably the art of raising cattle, but I don't notice it except for the big differences, like cattle, feeding operation cows versus
Yeah.
grass fed. I notice the difference there. And I notice how I feel, but I'm also looking for it. Whereas if you're not looking for it, if you're just looking for a wine to get me drunk, I'm gonna be fine with something off the supermarket. But once you start noticing the difference, once you can feel the difference and you look for it, it's pretty massive.
So I know you say winemaker. Are there winemakers that are also, would you say farmers too? Or like, would you consider yourself a farmer?
Yeah, I mean, I do less farming than most winemakers probably. I'm just more interested in business, making wine, and that's what gets my brain going.
Yeah.
I like thinking about it and being out there some, but hiring a guy to do it is more my speed.
Because that's what was my question too. Because I feel like, is that just a case by case basis from
A
the
lot of
winery?
winemakers, well, so you get to a certain size, and yeah, you can't do it all yourself, so you got a bunch of people. But a lot of the winemakers here that are on the smaller side, like, yeah, they're all in the farm doing that work all the time. And winemakers can be extremely particular about how everything's pruned, so it's like all done their specific way. They're out there, they've learned this vineyard for 40 years. Personally, it just doesn't really, like, I watched my dad be as laissez-faire, not knowing what he's doing in our vineyard, and produce great wines. And so I'm taking that as a baseline of this vineyard is going to produce great wine no matter what, and doing more than he did, but more training my guy to be out there because I'm just not as stimulated by farming,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah. And that's good to know. Like that's
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, I'm much more interested in connecting with people, and when you ask when what am I passionate about wine, the answer is no. But I'm passionate about a lot of the things that wine gets me. Wine gets me good meals, good conversations with good friends. And I love that. And it's really cool for me to make something with my hands, like the physical act of making wine, and it brings me a lot of pride. And it brings me a lot of pride when when I am out there to do it. But I'm not going to LARP as a hardcore farmer,
yeah.
and that's just not where my passion lies. But I'm out there, and I'm really happy I have a relationship with it, that I am stewarding the land to a degree. But I don't want to be doing that job, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. No, I totally get that. And that's, yeah. Just transitioning a little bit too on that, it makes me think about whenever you talked earlier, so the house we're in, you and your father, did your father start it, but then you both just ended up building this whole house together, or did you start helping him from the beginning on building this house?
So he built and designed houses his whole life, and always saw this chunk of property as there had to be a house there. And he's almost 80 now. When we built this, he was 75, and he was never going to build another house unless one of his kids built it. Mm-hmm. And so I hit this point of life where, like, I had made wine my first year of winemaking, and I was going to wait another year to 2 years before I had anything to sell, and I hated my job. So it was like, well, I don't know. You want to go build a house with your dad and probably inherit it one day and probably live in it one day, or find another job that you hate. So so he had prepped the land, and they'd poured the slab for the garage when I got here. And then from there on, so basically from the beginning,
Very cool.
Me, my dad, and one other guy.
Well, because what I asked you is when thinking of, being on this land and thinking long term, had that changed how you viewed this land and, for whenever you want to have children of your own too, did this ever shift that, or did you always think that you'd be back here and, eventually taking the reins over this?
So I
this
always
land?
thought I'd move back to Peony, but it's a town of 2,000 people, maybe 4,000 in the surrounding area. I always thought I would move back here when I was 40 with a wife and kids, like established.
Yeah.
And here I was moving back at 25 and single. So it was very different than what I expected, but it was just, it was what life gave me. And the whole time building this house, I was picturing my kids, future kids, with a girl that I didn't know yet, running around playing here and growing up like I did. And that made me really appreciate the stewardship, the generational nature of family land. And, I was always been super happy. I grew up here once I left. And
It's funny how that works.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I just go to college and like people grow up in suburbs and you're like, dang, or you like bring up like, yeah, when we used to go shoot prairie dogs, and they'd be like, what? Like I was not even that into it. Like I wasn't even hardcore. Anyways, so I just started picturing that and being here and watching the land and crafting it to a degree, putting the real sweat equity of building a house over a year with like literally me, one other guy, and my dad kind of overwatching it, doing some hard stuff, really made me appreciate it a lot more and made me become pretty passionate about raising my family here, which I already knew I wanted to do, but it was much more visceral and I wanted to do it, and it changed. It made me very clear, like I knew I wanted a family, but like it was like, no, you really want a tight family. That's like my North Star is I want to create a really tight family. Like what I didn't quite have growing up, I want a tight family.
Yeah.
And that's, I guess, the most important thing to me to build for myself going forward.
And then adding into just the wine piece, because I know you've mentioned that. Well, I guess with just the winery, and then now talking with, you can see your future children being here. Does that help shift or shape how you view the winery too, thinking long term as well?
Yeah, and I think from the beginning, I've always kind of thought long term. That's where my head goes on most things. But I see the winery, whether it's like, because I could scale down and just make wine from my vineyard and make a solid living, or at least it's easy enough except for harvest time, this time of year where it's balls to the walls. It's easy enough to do something else as well, that it could be a side hustle. But the value I've seen in it, in that perspective, from the familial perspective, is, yeah, land stewardship, but also I always saw my dad doing his job. I knew what my dad did viscerally. He built houses. And then when we moved here, he built the house that I grew up in and then farmed. And so like my dad retired to work 10-hour days. And so I just always knew what my dad did. And it wasn't he went into the office and came back after 8 hours or whatever. And so I think that was super valuable. Definitely learned work ethic from it, even though I hated the farming growing up and working for him. But I think having my kids see me doing what I do and having a physical result of that, I think is super valuable. I got that from my dad. It's not end all be all, but I think that outside of land stewardship and my own pride of doing something with my hands and something that I think I do well, I think that's probably the biggest value is my kids seeing what I do and understanding and getting in it. Like having a family business, I think is super valuable. I mean, there's so many lessons you can teach that way, and you get so much more opportunity to be with your kids, for them to be around all the time. So,
But can that also bring challenges?
oh, I'm sure. I mean,
Well, I'm just talking just from working with, your dad out on the farm and
oh yeah.
and
I
wine.
mean, my dad and I don't have the perfect relationship. Certain things we don't talk about anymore, and we've butted heads a lot over the years. And I think we've kind of just reached a point after me being here for 5 years that there's some more mutual respect, and just, it's an important relationship, and you get it to where you want to be. And it's great. I live a quarter mile from my parents, see them most days. And I think that we've gotten our relationship to a good place. And it's not the relationship I want with my kids, but it's what drives me to build the relationship I want with my kids. And so, it's hard every parent fucks up in some way, and my dad didn't fuck up in some major way or anything, but you get what you get on the familial relationships, right?
Yeah.
And it's driven me to want to create that for myself, and also like I think that it's made me appreciate that a parent is just a person, and they're not, no one's perfect, and I've got a ton of respect for my dad, but we don't like hang out.
Yeah.
We I enjoy doing projects with him, or like talking to him about projects, and I think that that's been awesome. We definitely butted heads building the house at times. I'm not great with authority, is why I work for myself. So there's that. But I think it's like I'm so grateful that I get to be around my dad. Like I don't know. I almost like I feel like such guttural respect, joy, thankfulness, and talk about it that way. And then it's funny that like we don't hang out.
Yeah.
And I don't really want to.
Yeah.
So it's every relationship is different. It's funny where it goes, but like I don't know, being near my parents is like one of the best things that I ever stumbled into.
Well, thank you for sharing that. That's why the reason why I just asked too in agriculture on just families and generations. I mean, that's one thing that's talked about in usually positive light, which there's a lot of good, but then it's very challenging, and that's why there's a lot of issues at times whenever farms pass down to the next generation and try to split up with the kids and all of that. It's just, I mean, to me, that's just part of life. It's I don't know how else to really describe that.
It's hard, but it's important. And
But then, like you were just saying, just everything you were just describing, like you see the value and the respect. And I hear that from other farmers too, to where they might have not have gotten along, and there might be some long-term trauma, but they also, looking back, are very grateful for their upbringing, seeing how much hard work that like their father usually did. So that's why I asked that too, because I see this a lot in agriculture too, where it's all over, and I mean that's just life.
It's hard. It's a hard relationship, but it's very important. And so much of everything I built on the shoulders of my father. And it'd be cool if my kids built off foundation. They will build off the foundation I give them.
Yeah.
But it's really cool that I get to steward the land that was my dad's life dream of acquiring and stewarding. So even though I'm not like hardcore into farming, I still get to steward the land in the sense of directing how it gets stewarded, and making sure that, and producing a product from it, and making sure I can afford to pay someone to work the land.
Yeah.
And I'm out there too. It's just like, it's not my passion,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess that your passion would be kind of talking with people and, like you're saying, having good meals. So I think this could transition to direct-to-consumer marketing as a whole, because I know this whole episode's a little bit different than everything else I've done, but I've also, why I want to do this for many reasons, but there is, to me, it all connects together, because with agriculture now, direct-to-consumer is starting to get bigger, but there's also a lot of farmers and ranchers, all they want to do is, a lot of farmers, and they just want to farm. They don't really want to market. They just want to be out in the fields. So that's what's kind of interesting, because you're really good with this in a lot of ways. So I guess taking it back to 2019, you started and then had a couple years to where it took to actually start producing. How did you start marketing it all once you started finally having the product to sell?
Yeah, that point about farmers want to farm, that's why I very much don't want to LARP as a farmer, because I see how much work people put in. And I think that a lot of what I see is like, you put in the work and this is what you want to do, and you want an honest living, but there's nothing dishonest about making more money from what you do. And so I talk with farmers, ranchers, a lot about like, okay, what direct consumer marketing specifically. So my plan was always start the winery and do farmers markets. So I live within 2 hours of a bunch of ski towns, so a bunch of wealth. And my town, I couldn't make any money selling wine. People don't have a ton of money. And there's a bunch of other wineries around. So I would drive hour and a half, 2 hours. I started out 5 days a week to do farmers markets in Aspen, Telluride, Basalt, Glenwood, all these different places that are just a bit more affluent, a bit more separated from the food supply, and started selling wine there. And I got the first year I got my foothold. I understood that, like, okay, my wine sells. And the next year I just did one market that year, and then I did five, and just was constantly on the road selling wine. And you learn a ton. I mean, I needed that visceral, is my wine good? Am I crazy for doing this?
Yep.
And I got it. And then I started getting more than that. And you talk to all these people that are doing farmers markets, and farmers markets are great ways to get out there, meet your community. Especially if you're doing one in your community, it's incredible. But if you can't scale that, like if you can't scale those customer relationships into further business, then all they are is a sales opportunity, which is great. And I needed that. I needed the sales opportunity. But if you can't, you need that to turn into something else. So anyways, I started with farmers markets. The original goal was to then build a tasting room in Peonia and bring people in and sell wine that way. And then I got on Twitter, and all of a sudden people started buying my wine on Twitter, and I've moved completely in that route. But you talk to a lot of farmers, and they are just grinding. I mean, I don't know how so many people work so much harder than me, and I thought I was grinding at these markets. And they meet their customers, and it's like, if you're selling beef, frozen beef, it's like, the people show up every week and they buy the beef, and then you're gone half the year, and it's hard to ship, and it's hard to sell large amounts to people. But you kind of need to do that, otherwise you're constantly on the road traveling, and there's no, like, maybe I guess you could hire someone to help with that, and that helps a lot. But
Well, I guess for you, what do you think that you've done well when trying to just sell to a customer?
so
From labeling or just anything like
yeah, so with wine, there's so much jargon, there's so much classism and elitism that it's really hard to understand wine. It's really hard to even ask questions. It's really hard to approach. And it's also a black box. I mean, there's 75 ingredients in a wine bottle that are not labeled on the bottle, that you can put in, that are not necessarily put in, and you don't know whether they are or aren't, and you also don't know how to ask anything about that, because you just feel intimidated. People, when someone knows a lot about wine, it's kind of like, oh, I don't want to ask a stupid question, or you tasted cranberries in that wine? Like, I didn't get that. So there's wine people, there's people who are a little bit into wine, but the vast majority of people just want something that tastes good. Great. There's nothing wrong with that. So I approach wine, like, I came into it as an outsider. I started a winery because it was an opportunity. I wanted to start a business, and it was something that was there for me. So I can talk about wine in a way that's more layman approachable. I can give you big jargon words if you want.
Well, it's more so, I guess, just what do you think, just like, is it how you approach it? Because I didn't know if there's any advice you could have to a farmer or rancher that either they're already doing direct to consumer or are considering it, and just things that they should think about when actually starting that endeavor.
Yeah, so I mean, whenever I talk to farmers, I am always asking them what their value added product is. What's the shelf stable thing that you do? Because that's shippable, that's always available, and I mean, especially with farming vegetables or something, it's so ephemeral. You have a growing season, then it stops and it doesn't keep. Beef, you can at least freeze. So I'm always asking that. I'm always asking, like, what could we ship? What's possible to scale these things beyond just your direct community? That, yes, we want to supply with food, but you need to find an audience that really cares about what you do, not just as, like, beyond maybe what you have, so you can expand. For me, it was getting on Twitter and learning about Bitcoin and meeting Bitcoiners and realizing that these people care passionately about what is in their food, what is in their wine, and they want to buy from people who also at least accept Bitcoin, are curious about it, trying to understand it. And that started with just I got into Bitcoin trying to learn about it to now my entire business is Bitcoiners buying my wine. And so one other thing I tell businesses, if you're trying to like actually build a brand and market beyond just like, I don't know, just farming, is like stand for something. And I think that there's a lot of people who run social media for businesses that don't want they don't want to offend anyone. Mm-hmm. They want to appease everyone. And when you appease everyone, you appease no one. And so I just say stand for something. It does not have to be like black and white. It does not have to be super controversial. It does not have to be political. But stand for something that you value massively, and you'll find a lot of other people that value that massively. For me, that was Bitcoin, and then it bled into family values and how I make wine and the healthy part of making wine.
Like, so you're saying like you'd be sharing just those aspects to Twitter and the world essentially?
Lean into those things that you really care about. And like, yeah, sure, there may be a couple things that you really care about that there isn't this massive market of people that really care about them. But like, I think a lot of like farmers and ranchers really care about family. Lean into family values, lean into Christian values, lean into doing things the right way and hard work. And like, this is what we really stand for, and be loud and proud about it. And a lot of people will see that, gravitate towards it, relate with you in a way that's beyond just good food. Oh, this is where I get beef. It's no, I get beef from this brand because they stand for the world that I want to live in. And we like, it's funny seeing American Express ads on TV, like go spend for small business, because Small Business Saturday, stuff like that. Because I mean, they just charge small businesses more money, so they want that. But it is a very valuable thing to vote with your money. And you want to vote with your money for businesses that are producing what you want to consume in the future so that they stick around so you can get what you want. But you also want, if you have a choice between those businesses, you want to vote for the one that is building the world that you want to live in. So someone that stands for the things that you stand for, something that values the things you want to value, because if you give them your value, they will foster, like you give them life, you foster those values. And so if you just as a business say, I make beef and it's really good, I grow veggies and they're really good, great, a lot of people want that. But if you're also I'm the Christian beef guy, I'm the like hard work, teach my kids how to work hard beef guy, then everyone who wants that in their life is going to come to you. Mm-hmm. Every single person. Like, you give them an extra reason to support you beyond just the quality of your food. And the amount of people that like, there's certain things, you may turn some people away. But if we're talking the things that I've kind of mentioned, like those people that you turn away from that, they weren't going to be good customers anyway. And ultimately, like, if you're trying to appease everyone and afraid of turning people away, yeah, you're both not going to turn a ton of people onto you hardcore. You're not going to give them a reason to really care. But you're also like, you're scared of turning away the people that you would turn away anyway. Because if you're trying to build a relationship, you're trying to connect with people, your values are going to come forward. And if there's someone you really don't agree with, like, they're probably not going to be a long-term customer because you don't vibe with them. And yeah, you can have the best products, but like, ultimately they probably find someone else that they vibe with more that produces a similar product. So you want to give these people a reason to like gutturally love and support you. And the only way to do that is to be yourself, really. And sure, you cut some corners and you don't show everything, you show what you're comfortable with, but like, give people more reasons to care about you than just, I make a good product.
I love that. You mentioned Bitcoin. What is Bitcoin?
I was really into personal finance, helping my friends. The financial literacy around is astounding. So I would get people on their, the right checking account, the right credit cards to get good percent back, and budgeting, and just trying to really help them like get your finances sound. And then you start getting into the idea of, okay, well, the dollar always loses value, so the only way to outperform that is to invest. And you can invest in yourself, you can invest in your business, but most people invest in stock market, have a portfolio of that. And so it's a bit of a flipping the system on its head, where in the current system, inflation is baked in. There has to be inflation. You cannot stop it. If you stop it, the system implodes. It's baked into the system, and it is an increasing level of inflation necessary. I mean, I think it's pretty visceral, even though it's impossible to picture $37.5 trillion of debt. But the only way out of the debt for the United States government is they can default on it and just not pay everyone back, and then the world goes crazy. Or they can just print more money, slowly devalue everyone who holds the dollar, and inflate their way out of it. So the $37 trillion is worth less than it is today. So that's the route they're going to take, because they don't want to default and don't want to set the world on fire. So essentially, if you're using dollars as your savings account, as your unit of account, a valuation for anything, the dollar has to lose value, always. And so you always have to raise your prices. But the insidious thing about inflation is that your wages on average for each person does not keep up with inflation. I mean, you have to, they tell you it's 3% inflation, it's usually higher, and you have to always get a raise of 3 to 5%, whatever, just to keep up. And if you're not getting that, your life is getting worse.
That's why they say on time theft.
Exactly. It's stealing your... So money is just an abstracted form of your time and energy. I worked for the money, I put in that effort, and now I have money to represent that effort. And so they're able to just continuously steal that. But if you're running a business, your prices always have to go up, and your customers are always going to be less able to afford it unless you're finding new, wealthier customers that are getting harder and harder to come by. And so if your costs are always going up and your customers are having a harder and harder time affording it, your margin is always getting squeezed. And this will always happen. And so eventually that becomes, where's your margin? It's zero. It's impossible to run this business, and then you have to go get a job doing something else for another thing that's margin is going to get squeezed. And so if they are constantly having to inflate your dollar away, they're constantly having to lose value, there's no way to really beat that system. If you bet on the S&P 500, the S&P 500 is flat to down when measured in the amount of dollars. It's actually down since the peak before 1929, the S&P 500. So if you invest in the S&P 500, you are flat. And if you want to do more than that, then you have to educate yourself on investments. You have to be a good investor, which is like 1% of the population, a good trader or whatever. And you have to do all that on top of being a successful business person, running your business. And those margins are always getting squeezed. So it's really hard to beat the system. And that's why there's so much money, there's so many people in Wall Street, is because that's the only place you can really make money in this world. And so Bitcoin is an opt-out of that. It's really early in the Bitcoin world, so like a lot of people are afraid of the volatility, and the volatility is your opportunity, but it's also scary when you don't understand it. So I never tell anyone to buy Bitcoin. I think it's going to be the best performing asset of the next 10 to 20 years, but when I first bought Bitcoin, I went all in, and then literally a week later it went 50% down. And then I went all in again with whatever money I could scrounge up, bought more because I understood it, and then it went up again, and I took out a loan to buy more Bitcoin, and it dropped down 80%. But I timed things as bad as I could. I understood Bitcoin, but I didn't understand markets. And if I didn't understand Bitcoin, if I was just buying it because people told me it was going to go up, I would have sold, and I'd be screwed right now. I would have really lost all my money. What I got was I was just poor, really poor for a little while, and now everything's turned around and it's all good. And no one has ever lost money if they held Bitcoin for 4 years. So I knew that. I knew if I bought it and had a 10-year time horizon, 4-year time horizon, that I would be fine. And it's turned out that way. But if I didn't understand Bitcoin, if I didn't start with education, I would have sold the bottom and I would have just lost all my money and be screwed. So what Bitcoin does is, Bitcoin is a different money. Throughout history, we had gold, silver, we've had iron, we've had shells, all different kinds of things. And just what we were born with, what we all understand is the dollar. The dollar is backed by nothing. It's backed by the full faith and whatever, the United States government. It's backed by the military enforcing that you use it. It's backed by the fact that you have to pay taxes in it. But the monetary policy, how many dollars exist and will be created, is determined by 15 people in a dark room. No, probably dark room smoking cigars back in the day, but these days it's just 15 people decide the monetary policy for basically the entire world, because the entire world bases theirs off of the dollar. And so they have to completely control it in a way that it doesn't fail, because they're in debt and it's gonna depreciate. They set the monetary policy, not the free market. So Bitcoin has its monetary policy set in stone. It doesn't change, and there's only a certain amount of them. And so the volatility you're seeing is people not understanding Bitcoin. You look at the difference between me, who only wants to own Bitcoin, and someone who doesn't understand it but is curious, and someone who thinks it's rat poison. Those are three very different valuations of Bitcoin. And there's people trading it, so that trying to get the top, trying to write it down, trying to buy the bottom, write it up, trade with leverage, get wrecked. Like, that is not anything that I would want to touch at all. And it's just this emerging system that is volatile because it's new, because new people are adopting it. People don't understand it. Slowly people do. They get exuberant. It goes back down. They get back caught to reality. It catches back up. And that's just how things grow. Technology, like the internet, I guess I wasn't totally around for it, but it comes in waves. Like, you get really psyched on it, and then you kind of hit a lull, and then you get really psyched on it again. I'm sure cell phone technology, the same thing. But money is the most viral technology. When your money doesn't work, it affects every part of your life. So when you are really searching for the money that works, you want to make money. So it's going to have these more viral moments. Plus, it has a value to it. So you see it. So you see it change. It's more up and down because you can see it change. Unlike you couldn't see the internet adoption change when people would get psyched on it, not care. Like with AI, we see I got psyched on this new thing, and then I kind of got bored of it. I saw the flaws, and I got psyched on it again. And what Bitcoin is it doesn't change, but people, the price is people. The price is people interacting with it. And Bitcoin is traded for 14 years, and 11 out of those 14 years, it was the best performing asset in the entire world. Those 3 years that it wasn't, it was the worst performing asset in the entire world. But over time, it's been the best performing, over the full span, it's been the best performing asset in human history. And so it is the invention of absolute scarcity. It is, in my opinion, the perfect money. And it's something that humanity was always going to discover. And it's my way of opting out of constant theft. So you cannot save dollars. Absolutely not. You will get destroyed eventually. So you have to invest. And if you're going to own anything, you want to own the best thing. And Bitcoin is the best thing.
So what about the folks that say whenever buying Bitcoin, they can't use it? You can't buy anything with it.
So 50% of my wine sales are in Bitcoin. And I find lots of opportunities to use it. But like, what's used? Yeah, sure, I use dollars to spend, but I don't use dollars to save, because a little bit, but like that'd be stupid.
Do you think that we will hit that to where? Because I can see from somebody that has never really looked into Bitcoin, and then you try to look to buy any type of goods or services with Bitcoin. You can buy my apparel with Bitcoin, wine, but
more and more
on the grand scheme of things, it's few and far between for the average person to look.
Well, yes and no. More and more, yeah. If like I said, it's early, and Bitcoin has clearly established itself as the best savings technology possible. The meme of digital gold is there, and it's definitely like proven itself the best performing asset as the best way to save money. Tiger, no. Hey, go on. So it's proven itself as the best way to save money.
Yeah.
And over time, as more restrictions get in place, I think it'll get become the best way to spend money too. Because as the United States government wants to control the way you spend money for their own gain, for their own survival, you need freedom money, and no one can stop you from spending Bitcoin. But in the terms of like how often it's accepted, more and more and more, and ultimately, I'm just saying save in it because it's the best savings asset. The way that it becomes something that people spend is that businesses stop accepting dollars because they see this is being inflated away. I don't want this. I just want to be paid in good money. You want to spend your dollars because you want to get rid of your bad money first. But businesses eventually don't want to accept that. They want to accept Bitcoin. So it's not as uncommon as you think. Square has a pilot program right now that I'm on that I can accept Bitcoin through my payment terminal, my Square payment terminal. And I think in 2026, that'll go out to every single Square terminal in the United States. And once that's done, if we see adoption, because there's something like 30 million people in the United States have Bitcoin, then every other company has to do that too. But if you just start it, every Square terminal in the United States and the world is going to be accepting Bitcoin next year for payment they don't even have to know about it. Like they could convert it instantly to dollars. It's a pretty illogical argument to make that you can't spend it. And I'm not even arguing that you should spend it. Like you should save it first. You should save in Bitcoin. And then you see the power of spending good money on businesses that you want to exist in the future. Like if we go back to vote with your money, I vote with my dollars. I spend on the companies that I want to succeed. If I really want to give them my utmost vote, I pay them with Bitcoin. And that is like when I get paid in Bitcoin, it's the ultimate vote of confidence for my product. And additionally, there's a lot of people that are increasingly wealthy. Like I said, Bitcoin is the best performing asset in human history that have bought Bitcoin and held it for 4 years, that are in profit, that are very passionate about this thing, that if you just open the doors, I accept Bitcoin, you could even accept Bitcoin and convert it instantly to dollars. There's plenty of tools that do that. Then they will become religious consumers for you because Bitcoiners are crazy. They want to change the world and they're actively doing so, and they speak with their actions, and they want good quality products and they want to vote with their money. And if you just give them a reason to do so, if you're a farmer, you probably have values that Bitcoiners align with. And if you produce good food, you especially do. And if you just say, I accept Bitcoin, whether you keep it or not, I think you should, but you can convert it to dollars, you just open up that pathway, and there's more Bitcoiners than you know. And they're increasingly wealthy, and they will get even more increasingly wealthy and be able to afford your products more and more and more in a world where most people will be able to afford your products less and less and less. It is just the ultimate customer base to grab onto. And I say this as someone who just lucked into it, and it was just such a no-brainer and just like such fire of passion and wanting to support me, that it's just like it's pretty wild. And yeah, sure, you have to put yourself out there in front of them. You don't know how to do that, but just open the door to them. Just Bitcoin, not crypto, and you'll probably at least get 1 or 2 customers that become your best customers. And like the amount of labor it takes to get to that point to start accepting Bitcoin, it's so low. It's so low. Just be open to it. And then you get 1 or 2 of your best customers. Great. What else have you done to get that?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, in the whole Bitcoin versus other cryptos too has made it very challenging because a lot of times I will notice that people will mention the price of Bitcoin and they assume that, oh, that's capped. And so they look for the next thing and they go to all these other crypto altcoins, which to me is, I'm in the boat with a lot of Bitcoiners that call them shitcoiners. I don't, I like that term. Just because I just read a lot from, especially the older generations too, on this, and in agriculture too. just a lot of reservations around it all, and wouldn't even really have an open year. Have you been able to, because you talk about this a lot online and I know in person too, how do you go about that when people are just won't even, I guess let me back up. Have you had people whenever you're talking to them just really aren't listening to what you're trying to say? And in those scenarios, if that has happened, how do you just go about that and educating them on Bitcoin?
I think I start with just educating them about the system they're living in and how they're guaranteed theft, they're guaranteed debasement, and if they save dollars, they're guaranteed to lose money. And you start then just saying like, look, you have to invest. And I think Bitcoin's the best thing to invest in, and it's got the track record of being the best investment. I was really into personal finance, so like this was a nerd thing for me. I listened to all the podcasts and got really into it, and I saw firsthand my friends not caring about personal finance even before I got into Bitcoin. So like that's part of the reason I'm really into Bitcoin, is because you ultimately would just be able to save your money and not have to become a financial advisor, not have to hire a financial advisor to be able to be successful in this world, because you have to become an investor. And so when people aren't into it, I don't push it, because then you just push back.
Yeah.
And I think it is imperative, and if you don't grab onto Bitcoin, you will die a slow death as far as a business or financial life goes. You may not notice it for a while, and you get good stock market returns, great, but like Bitcoin is the hurdle rate, and as long as you don't adopt that, you're probably not going to pass it. And so on the question of shitcoins, when Bitcoin kind of has this immaculate conception. It was created by Satoshi Nakamoto. No one knows who Satoshi Nakamoto was, and Satoshi Nakamoto disappeared after a few years. And but the history beyond that is there was this group called cypherpunks that were trying to develop decentralized internet money. And Bitcoin is not the first decentralized internet money, it's just the first to succeed. And what Satoshi did is he basically combined a lot of things that already existed and put them together in a way that worked. And so once he did that, he opened the door, because this works. Okay, I'm sure we can tweak it in slightly different ways, because there's a lot of, like 21 million coins is completely arbitrary. I think he came to that number in a good way, but it's an arbitrary number. Could have chosen a million different things. And so that you see that Satoshi created Bitcoin. Bitcoin went up a ton in value. That's essentially alchemy. Someone just created, there's been a search to create gold out of other things for millennia. Mm-hmm. And Satoshi did it digitally. He created, quote unquote, digital gold. And so everyone else sees that and they're like, oh, wait, Satoshi just created money? I want to create money. And the beginning of that is Bitcoin is, let's say Bitcoin's 4 years old, 5 years old, like it hasn't proven itself. It's done nothing. It's like, I was in high school. I'd barely heard of it. Maybe it was just on the Silk Road for drugs, but it hadn't proven itself as like this great money yet. It didn't have more energy backing it than small countries. It didn't have the adoption that it currently has. Now, like it could have been attacked and destroyed, but it wasn't. And now it's extremely powerful and can't be attacked and destroyed in a real way. You can be kept from holding it. Your government can come after you, but it can't stop Bitcoin. And so all these people see Bitcoin get created that maybe in good faith are like, oh, well, I think Bitcoin should have been made like this. And so they make another thing like it, release it, and hope that it goes up and they make a ton of money because they've held a ton. And over time, that's just got more insidious it's become more obvious scams, where I think a lot of it was good-hearted attempts initially. It's turned into, oh, I just want to create this thing, so hopefully people will buy it, and then I can dump on them.
Yep, so many pump and dumps.
Yes, and so many coins that facilitate pump and dumps. And if money throughout history tends to win. There's the harder money wins as long as there's enough of it. And the pushback I get is like, well, gold and silver coexisted. The reason gold and silver coexisted is because gold could not be divided enough for the peasants to use. Gold was too valuable and it wasn't divisible enough. So you use silver, it's divisible, there's more of it, it's a higher inflation money. And the peasants use that, and then the rich people get gold coins, which is lower inflation rate. And so money tends to win. It would tend to gold, but people couldn't afford it, and there wasn't enough of it. But Bitcoin is infinitely divisible. So you can buy $5 of Bitcoin just fine. And it's kind of perfected that. It's perfected like if we're comparing it to gold, Bitcoin perfected the divisibility. It's perfected the transmissibility. You don't have to send a ship across the ocean to pay someone in England. The trust is also perfected because everyone can see the ledger, see how many Bitcoins are there, see who owns what, and you don't have to trust a system to tell you, oh yeah, your bank says this, which means we actually have the gold back on the gold standard, which they didn't. And it's just become the perfect money, and people want to emulate that, and so they create other coins, and thus the scams. And it's unfortunate, as someone who sees Bitcoin as this world-changing technology, it's unfortunate to see it lumped in with all these people who are scamming you, because it's really just keeping good people out of Bitcoin, keeping good people afraid of Bitcoin. And they want to latch on to Bitcoin because Bitcoin is so great that they want to associate themselves with it. Whereas when you're into Bitcoin, you want a 10-foot pole between you and them, because my goal is for as many good people especially, to adopt Bitcoin, because the other option is having their money stolen from them constantly. And so when you opt out of Bitcoin, there's volatility because it's young. Eventually that volatility dies down. And the volatility is mostly up. So if you're an early adopter, you benefit from it, and it's not too late. It's like insanely early.
Yeah.
In Bitcoin world. And so, if you want to wait and Bitcoin becomes the money and you just have to work for it because no one's willing to accept your dollars for the Bitcoin, great, do that. Bitcoin will make the world a better place even if you don't buy Bitcoin before that. And so that's the world I'm working towards. I think Bitcoin resets the incentives to a place where we're all kind of benefiting each other in a way, and no one's getting stolen from in a constant way, at least. And I think it makes the world a better place. So that's why I'm so passionate about it. Like, yeah, sure, it goes up a bunch, I'll probably make some money, but the big thing is that it makes the world a better place, and that was what makes me so psyched about it.
So what about the people that say that's a Ponzi scheme?
They're just wrong, I guess, but
Yeah, I guess how would you answer whenever someone probably comes out and says it's just one giant Ponzi scheme?
yeah, a Ponzi scheme is like a centrally controlled thing where you always have new investors paying out the old investors, and you just promise higher and higher rates of return until it blows up. And what Bitcoin is it's just, hey, here's the rules, this is what exists, and they can't ever be changed. It's code. I'm not a code guy, but I know they can't be changed. So these are the rules of the road. No one can print more. We're at about 94% of all Bitcoin that will ever be mined, and that will go till 2140. And no one can change the rules. There's no central actor determining the price of Bitcoin. It's all in the free market. It goes up and down, and it mostly goes up. But I get it. Like, you see an 80% crash, and you're like, I'm not buying that. What if it crashes 80% again? I'm telling you, as someone who bought the top before the 80% crash, before this 50% crash, that is absolutely something you want. You want this thing. It is the best performing asset, even if you buy at the top. If you have a 4-year timeline, you don't invest something that you can't afford to lose, you need it. That's not the greatest anti-Ponzi scheme argument, but it's just like, that's just such a ridiculous assumption to me. It shows you've done no research, and I don't want to start there.
I love that. Two final things too. On the people that will say that what happens if the grid goes off or the power grid goes off, because I hear that all the time, which to me I find a very funny point, but I would just love to hear your thoughts on that.
My dad has the same thing. His biggest fear is a EMP.
And to me, I was just like, if that ever happens, then you got way more things to worry about than your money.
So if we ever go back to metal as money, the metal you want is not going to be gold. The metal you want is brass and lead. Because if the grid goes down, our entire society goes down. And you're going to be fighting for food, you're going to be fighting for guns, you're going to be fighting for the money you lost in the stock market, because you lose that too. The money you think you got money in your bank account, like you lose all the modern things that we have in life. Like sure you have cash, but how long does someone accept cash?
Exactly.
How long does someone accept gold?
Yeah.
They're going to accept something worthwhile until the society builds back and we can specialize. But like in that moment of chaos, it doesn't matter. Like if the grade goes down and you lose your Bitcoin, that is the least of your problems.
I could not agree more with you on that because I always laugh whenever I read that type of comment. The final thing on the whole key aspect of having your key, and then if you lose it, you might lose it altogether. And I hear that a lot from people that are pushing back to where they just don't want that, or they seem that that's just way too complicated. I guess, what are your thoughts on that?
So if you don't want to take the personal responsibility, you don't have to. What you have is the option. And
Can you explain what?
Yeah,
Most people probably don't even know that
Sure.
they think that all it is the 10 keys, and if you lose it, you're screwed.
Yeah. So how you get Bitcoin, you're probably going to log on to an exchange. You're going to send them dollars from your bank account that you have your bank password. And like if you ever lose your bank password, you contact them and verify your identity or whatever. It's going to be a hassle, but send your dollars to the exchange, and then that exchange has a password, and if you lose that password, it's the same thing as your bank, basically. You buy the Bitcoin, and then what you can do with your Bitcoin is you can move it to your personal cold storage, and this is like moving your gold from the bank to your own vault. The vault is on the internet. I get it. That's scary. But what you can do is you can do that, and you can do it in a way that no one can ever steal. So like with gold, someone can put a gun to your head, and you show them your safe. Maybe you don't ever tell them the code, and they don't ever find the code, but they can still steal the safe and get your gold. With Bitcoin, you can self-custody in a way that, in that same analogy, they can put a gun to your head, and if they shoot you, if you have your stuff hidden, they won't get the Bitcoin. They can't find it. They can't get it. There's no way to access it. So you can take personal self-responsibility with that. And what most people do is they get a hardware wallet, so it can't be stolen in any way that's like connected to the internet. And they write down a 12 or 24 word seed phrase that's basically just a complicated password. And they either bury that or hide it or split it up in a way that like if someone found it, they don't get everything, because that 12 or 24 word password is your Bitcoin essentially. So with that, the device stores that, and then your backup is that seed phrase, that 12 or 24 words on steel. And you could lose the device and have that backup and grab it anywhere. So there is ways to not lose it, but the big thing is that it can't be stolen from you unless like you can take ways to keep it from getting stolen. And more than likely, like, people are not going to come after you for owning like whatever you're planning on investing in Bitcoin right now. Then there's ways to go beyond that, where you have 3 keys and you only have to sign in 2, so you can put one in a safety deposit box, all this stuff. But basically, like, you have the option to take personal responsibility, hardcore personal responsibility. And if you don't want to do that, you can just buy Bitcoin and IBIT on a brokerage account. You can buy it on an exchange. And like, yeah, I recommend 100% take the personal responsibility. If you can have a kid, if you can drive a car, you can figure this out. It's not that hard, but it is a lot of responsibility. And so until you're ready, don't. But the first step is just getting a little. Don't let the end result, don't let the end potential goal stop you from getting off zero. And there's tons of resources to help you with,
That was gonna be my
how to do that.
final question was just anybody that might be interested, not even just buying, but this might have just started the interest of learning more.
Yeah, look up BTC Sessions on YouTube, and he has tutorials for literally everything. He's just like amazing educator, and
I'll link all that too.
yeah, he's the guy to go look for. You can look up very specific things for that. Yeah, the biggest thing is like, don't let not understanding how to hold Bitcoin perfectly stop you from getting your first little bit, because you are guaranteed to lose if you hold dollars. If you invest in the S&P 500, you're taking risk to hopefully just tread water. And in my opinion, I think gold is a great investment, but if you look at what Bitcoin is taking market share from gold because it's just better than gold. So
It's a harder money, like you said.
it's a harder money, but gold inflates at 2% a year, and then it also failed as global money. So Bitcoin has the potential to become global money, so it's a massive upside, and its bottom downside is just becoming gold, a better gold. So yeah, it's money that can't be inflated away. It's money that like no one can steal from you if you store it right, and it's money that no one can ever stop you from transacting. And if you're big on personal freedom and you want self-sovereignty, you need guns, you need food, and you need money that you can use in other ways to spend it that no one can stop you. And Bitcoin is the best, if not the only option for that.
What about from the privacy aspect? Because you mentioned the public ledger, how people can go on there and see the transactions. Do you have any worries on any type of, just issues with that, especially with how advanced our technology continues to go, with how obviously corrupted powers are, and then like you were saying that you're opting out of the current market, and so it's a very dangerous thing because of the powers that be don't want that, obviously.
Yeah.
And so obviously they're going to try to find every single possible way to stop Bitcoin. I guess, yeah, what are your thoughts on just all of that?
I first got into Bitcoin around the COVID lockdowns, and for the entire first 4 years that I was learning about Bitcoin, I fully always expected this was something that I was so passionate about, and I think it's Bitcoin or slavery. Slavery is just the stealing of your work, effort, energy. So I'm choosing Bitcoin, and I'm going to go all in on that. I always saw it as something that I'd probably at least get labeled a criminal for holding. And the 2024 election gave me my first taste of maybe that's not going to happen. Not that a certain politician won't want to do that, not that the system won't want to do that in the future, but Trump is clearly, seemingly not going to do that. And where Bitcoin goes from the beginning of his term to where it ends up at the end of his term, no matter who becomes president after that, I think it'll be political suicide to be against Bitcoin. And so no one can ban you from owning Bitcoin. No one can ban you from, or they can, I guess I get saying that wrong. They can try and ban you from owning Bitcoin. If you store it right, they can't take it from you. But a government can only ban its citizens. It can only ban itself from having Bitcoin. It can't stop Bitcoin at this point. Bitcoin's too big. It's too powerful. There's no way to beat it. And if you can't beat them, join them. But they will. I mean, there's the privacy on Bitcoin is a flaw. It's not a flaw. It's just something that needs to be improved. Bitcoin was built to focus on decentralized freedom of ability to spend. It's not anonymous, it's pseudonymous, so you can derive who has what if you have another point of identification.
Yeah,
so like
that's why I brought that up.
You could figure out how much Bitcoin I have if you had all the information, if you hacked the places that I bought Bitcoin and figured it out. You can get Bitcoin in other ways, like you could accept Bitcoin for your meat or wine or whatever, and just have it sent directly to you and has no ties to your identity. You can do that. It's a place that is actively being used to improve. There are things that are being done and to improve privacy. But yeah, as a public Bitcoiner, if you're outspoken about owning Bitcoin, you need to take different measures for your privacy, for your personal safety of your Bitcoin. So I do something different with my Bitcoin than I would just tell a friend to do.
Yeah.
Because I'm loud about owning Bitcoin, telling people to do it, and so thus people will assume I like they'll come at. I'm more likely to be a target.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
But if you just own Bitcoin and it's on the ledger, and like the worst thing you're going to get is a bunch of spam calls that you already get of people trying to steal your Bitcoin over the phone, and you already get those. Like you already get stupid spam calls all the time, and so it's just another reason to have that. And hopefully, that gets corrected or whatever. But like, just never tell someone your seed phrase, and don't store your seed phrase, which is your key, which is your complicated password, online. Write it down, physical form, and they won't be able to steal it. So,
or keep it on exchange, right?
So what I was saying earlier though is like, just don't have zero Bitcoin, and don't worry about the ultimate like storage strategy of, oh yeah, dude, you gotta go bury it in the backyard. Like you can't tell anyone. Like, don't worry about that. Just have some, and as that grows, you start to care more about its security, and you eventually get it off the exchange. The reason Bitcoiners are so big about get it off the exchange is because in the past, the exchanges have been more cowboy. They haven't been as regulated, and they've been played games. They've sold people Bitcoin that they didn't actually have, or they took out debt and they just blew up, and people lost all their money that they thought they had. But if you took the Bitcoin off the exchange, instead of just seeing the value of Bitcoin on the exchange, trust me, bro, we have it. You verify that it's in your wallet. And so Bitcoiners have been big. Don't trust, verify. Take the money off the exchange, get it in your personal wallet, then no one can steal it from you. But like, if you don't have any Bitcoin, just buy some.
Yeah.
Have some, learn about it. Like I said, I say I don't tell people to buy it, but I tell people to not have zero. Get a little bit and start learning about it. And just having a little bit, you'll watch it, you'll start to like learn about how it moves, how just break the barrier. Don't have zero and learn about it. And I mean, it'll be the best financial move you ever made.
I definitely agree. And so that's why I was glad to have this conversation. Thank you for having me, Ben.
Yeah, thanks for coming, and thanks for letting me be on your podcast.
We're good. Visit www.theregenaissance.co to learn more.